This program is brought to you by Newsworks in cooperation with the City of Eau Claire. This program is simulcast on WRFP-LP 101.9 FM. The Eau Claire City Council meeting will return in a moment. Newsworks is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, please contact us via phone at 715-839-5067 or online at valleymediaworks.org. This program is simulcast on WRFP-LP 101.9 FM. We now return you to the Eau Claire City Council meeting.
I'll call the Eau Claire City Council meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good afternoon, and thank you all for joining us here for our Tuesday, August 13th legislative session. During its legislative session, the Eau Claire City Council deliberates and takes action on the agenda items before us today. City staff and council members have spent a great deal of time preparing for this meeting. Thank you to the residents for being here and a part of this as well. Thank you to Valley Media Works for live streaming this proceeding for those of you not able to join us in person. To watch, please visit valleymediaworks.org or visit the channel 994 on Spectrum Cable. It is also available at 101.9 FM, and you can also find past meetings on YouTube under the Chippewa Valley Media Works channel. We have a full agenda, and so we will get started. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Anderson. Here. Beaton. Benjamin. Here. Berge. Here. Christopherson. Here. Emmanuel. Here. Braegert.
Here.
Klinkhammer.
Here.
Lohr.
Here.
Weld.
Here.
Worthman.
Here.
So, back to our agenda. And looking at the consent agenda, for those of you that are here with the consent agenda, if you find your item on there, once we are completed with the vote, know that if the consent agenda is approved, everything listed under the consent agenda is passed. Do council members have any questions regarding the consent agenda? Seeing none, on a motion by Councilmember Emmanuel and seconded by Councilmember Berge, the consent agenda is moved. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Anderson. Aye. Benjamin. Aye. Berge. Aye. Christopherson. Aye. Emmanuel. Aye. Braegert.
Aye.
Klinkhammer.
Aye.
Lohr.
Aye.
Weld.
Aye.
Worthman.
Aye.
And the consent agenda is passed. There are no proclamations today, so we will move on to the business agenda, beginning with agenda item number 23, which is a resolution authorizing the fire department to accept grant monies from the Presto Foundation to purchase 2 gear extractors. Because this item amends the budget, a 2/3 vote of the elected members or 8 affirmative votes is required for adoption. Chief.
So just a quick info on this is through a mutual acquaintance of the Presto Foundation and the fire department, a retired firefighter, we became aware that the Presto Foundation was making money available to improve the health and safety of firefighters. And through that discussion, we came up with the determination that gear extractors were the best use of that money. And so with that encouragement, we made that request to Presto Foundation. Here they've agreed that they'll make a grant to the fire department to buy 2 gear extractors, which basically that's a heavy-duty commercial washing machine for fire gear, meant to remove contaminants from the gear, which reduces cancer. that as we go into fires, the gear absorbs all of that material that's burning within a building. We bring that back to the fire stations. It absorbs into our neck, our wrists. So the goal is to remove that as soon as you get back to the station. Currently, we have 2 gear extractors. The original one was Station 9. That's about 22 years old. And then we bought a smaller one for the new Fire Station 10. We've come to realize that we can use more. More of them means we'll wash the gear more often, encourage the employees to, as soon as they get back from any fire, whether it's a car fire, structure fire, or a dumpster fire, throw your gear in the washing machine. And so with this opportunity, we'll double what we have right now, actually a little more than double. Along with that, Chippewa Valley Technical College, all the fire instructors and the students utilize these same gear washers at our stations.
Any questions for Chief Bell?
Thank you.
I don't see any. Thank you. So on a motion by Councilmember Lohr and seconded by Councilmember Christopherson, this item is moved. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Beaton. Aye. Benjamin. Aye. Berge. Aye. Christopherson. Aye. Emmanuel. Aye. Grigert.
Aye.
Klinkhammer.
Aye.
Lohr.
Aye.
Weld.
Aye.
Worthman.
Aye.
Anderson. Aye.
And that item passes. Agenda item number 24, I will be recusing myself from the discussion and the vote, and will be handing over the gavel to Vice President Emmanuel. So if I could have her come up. Thank you.
Okay, we continue our work this afternoon on a business agenda with item 24, which is a resolution authorizing the acquisition of property along Andy Lane and appropriating funds. Because this item amends the budget, 2/3 affirmative vote of the council is needed. I would like to invite Finance Director Jay Winsence to give a presentation, please.
Thank you, Council Vice President Emmanuel. Before the City Council this afternoon is a resolution authorizing the acquisition of vacant land off of Andy Lane. As council members may recall, during the discussion on the 2020 through 24 capital improvements plan, funding was included in 2020 for the acquisition of residential land for the construction of affordable housing. $200,000 was included in the 2020 CIP for land acquisition. We have an accepted offer from the property owner in the amount of $150,000. This property currently has an assessed value of $196,900. The Plan Commission reviewed this potential acquisition at their meeting on August 5th and recommended that the acquisition proceed. This property is zoned R1 and is primarily surrounded by similarly zoned properties. Just by way of wayfinding, the property under consideration is kind of behind the homes and in business at the intersection of Jeffers Road and Truax at the starred location on this particular map. Included in your packet was a map that shows the properties under consideration. As you can see, at some point in the past, these properties were originally platted, and they were platted for smaller lots. Andy Lane, which is shown here, has not been improved. The right-of-way was dedicated for that, but the street was never improved. And these lots, while they were platted, were never built upon. The proposed acquisition would acquire all of those lots in addition to the other crosshatched lots on this map. So in total, we would be acquiring these 4 lots plus, I believe it's 14 already platted single-family lots as part of this proposal. This area is topographically challenged. So just wanted to put up a topographic map. There's a very large hill, the peak of which is located by my finger. And as you can see, the contour lines run very closely together as we start going down the hill, and then it gets a little flatter down in this area. Really, the development potential for the acquisition we're proposing is really this area that we would consider improving with city streets, utilities, and then platting for single-family homes. Once you start getting up too far into the hillside, the slopes are steep enough that they're really not developable. In thinking this through, I think staff's view is that this hillside and the hill represents has the potential for a natural area for residents of this particular community, and with perhaps hiking trails or other sorts of kind of passive recreational activities within this area. So as envisioned, the plan would be to construct or have constructed smaller single-family homes on small lots, similar to some of the I guess older areas of the community where homes are constructed on smaller lots. The streets and the utilities would be installed by the city. The lots would be sold to developers or others to construct affordable homes. We have had some discussions with other entities about potential partnerships to cause affordable homes to be constructed. There would be limitations placed on the size of the homes. We don't want, the goal here isn't to build large homes in this particular area. It's to build smaller, affordable homes. There would also be limitations placed on the resale value because, again, the long-term goal is that these homes retain their affordability and that the property owners be given some opportunity to benefit from the appreciation of their properties, but not so much as to realize a windfall profit that's somewhat limited, so that future property owners can benefit from that affordability as well. Because this item does appropriate funds, a 2/3 vote of the City Council is required to adopt this resolution. I'd be happy to answer questions.
Does council have any questions for Mr. Winsens? Yes, Councilmember Klinkhammer.
Thank you, Vice President. Two questions, Mr. Winsens. One is it going to be a cul-de-sac that will service that, or will it connect somewhere else?
Well, in the short term, I think it will be a cul-de-sac, and we haven't done a specific street layout at this point. There's been kind of preliminary discussions. But in the short term, I think we view that the street will come in. Probably this won't be the final alignment. We'll probably replat the entire area, but the street will come in and come down, and there will be a cul-de-sac then down in this particular area. In the long term, and there's an intervening parcel, but in the long term, there's a potential that a street could be constructed in this area to link an area over here that we're not acquiring but is owned by the same property owner with this particular area. But there is an intervening property owner, and I have no interest, no knowledge of that property owner's interest in potentially selling.
And without having platted the way it's ultimately going to be developed, do we have any idea what the cost to the city will be for providing streets and utilities for it?
It will likely run in the neighborhood of $400,000 to $500,000 for this portion of the development.
How is that going to reconcile with the $200,000 that was in the budget for the?
Sure. The $200,000 was for land acquisition. The utility costs, the street improvements would be constructed as part of the street program next year. The utility costs would also be constructed as part of that program. Then the proceeds from the sale of the lots would be used to offset the costs of constructing those improvements. In addition, we plan to follow the special assessment policy, so that the same special assessment policy that applies in other portions of the city would apply to this subdivision as well, so that there would be special assessments against the properties.
Thank you.
Councilmember Beaton.
Is there any way to expect how much the property sales will offset?
Well, our expectation is that the sale of the property will set the price of the lot so that it 100% offsets the city's cost of the land acquisition as well as the city's portion of the improvement costs.
Okay. Could I have another question?
Yes.
How many acres is that unbuildable area?
Scott, can you help me? If you give us a moment, we can get that for you, Councilmember Beaton. It would probably be these two parcels for the most part.
Okay, we can circle back with that information. And when you're ready, Mr. Allen, please come on forward and share. Any other questions? Yes, Councilmember Grigert.
President Emanuel. Mr. Winzans, I was wondering about how many houses you feel will actually be able to fit in this space. I know that when we had this in front of us in the capital budget, there was a number of 50 homes that was estimated at that time. And is there anything that has changed since then and as well? Yeah, the 50 home estimate was actually based upon this area as well as land to the east that's under ownership by the same property owner. We have not gone through and done a specific lot configuration with the size lots that we intend to plat, but my estimate is probably 25 to 30 lots in this particular area. If you think about it, there's 14 right here, and that's probably about half or so of the land area that we would propose acquiring. Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, looks like Mr. Allen is ready, so welcome you to the podium to share what you know.
Thank you to Mr. Solberg. He was able to pull it up quicker than I could. It's just 9.9 acres, so just under 10 acres for this property and this property together. All right.
Okay, does council have any further questions right now? Okay. Then on a motion by Councilmember Klinkhammer and seconded by Councilmember Worthman, item 24 is moved and discussion is in order. Councilmember Worthman.
Thank you, Vice President Emanuel. I just want to highlight this incredible opportunity and give my thanks to our city manager, Mr. Peters, to our staff for identifying this really on short notice, and I think making the most of an opportunity as it presents itself. I think this sort of nimbleness that we're seeing in this project, responding to the needs in our community, figuring out how we can respond to and address our affordable housing crisis in our community by encouraging more growth, I think is really important. And I just want to share my thanks for our staff and the hard work that has been already put in, and I'm sure more work to come.
Councilmember Christopherson.
Thank you, Vice President Emanuel. I just want to share with the council and with the public some contact that I've had from residents in the neighborhood that we're buying and would be building, just to flesh out some of the conversation about the city's role in building affordable housing. I want to say that I am in support of this. I think that the city is in a position and has a responsibility for leadership in an issue that impacts the economy of our community so largely. But a lot of the citizens have other perspectives, and I think that those voices should join the conversation. One individual suggested that really seeing the investment of the city would be better used in economic development, in impacting the wages that we would see and looking at the employment side of affordable housing. And another individual is concerned about the tax implications of investments that the city makes in our special projects, knowing that this area is affordable housing and that those modest increases in property tax really can actually price affordable housing out of reach of the residents there. So I really appreciated the conversations. I think that those are points that are well made and just expands the way that we as a city interact with this particular issue. I would also like to just add that this plan that we were seeing tonight is a little different than what came in front of Plan Commission and is much more appealing to me and I think more practical. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. I believe Councilmember Greger, you may have had your hand up. Let me get your light on. Just one moment, please. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Vice President Emanuel. Yeah, I too obviously saw this in front of Plan Commission, and you know, I gave it a lot of thought at that point and have continued to think about it. I am interested in visiting the land, assuming we decide to purchase it, because I think that may be able to spur some ideas too. But I think there's a lot. I think there's more here than just affordable housing opportunity. We do have our carbon neutrality goals, and this is a very forested area that we could play a strong role to protect. Most of the land and most of the trees and the forest, and potentially create some recreational opportunities for people beyond, beyond even the immediate neighborhood. So I guess that's one thing I want to just express, is that I think there's a lot of different ways that we can look at this, and having it in the city's hands, having this land owned by the city, I think allows us to do a lot. I also feel that potentially this housing, we could look at it from a perspective of the long-term affordability from the utility cost standpoint, where we just have been working on this net zero energy building standards, as an optional thing for design guidelines and things like that, and maybe we can incorporate some of that into the design of these homes. So, but ultimately today is really about the vote on whether to acquire their land, and I think that's a pretty easy one for me. So,
thank you for sharing. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing no further discussion, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Benjamin. Aye. Berge. Aye. Christopherson.
Aye.
Emanuel.
Aye.
Gragert.
Aye.
Klinkhammer.
Aye.
Lohr.
Aye.
Worthman.
Aye.
Anderson. Aye. Beaton. Aye.
Thank you. That resolution passes unanimously with one abstention. I now return the gavel back to the council president.
Thank you, Council Vice President Emanuel. Moving on to agenda item number 25, a resolution authorizing city staff to reject proposals submitted for the city-owned property at 559 North Hastings Way, the former fire station number 10, parcel 10-0526. Ms. Basom.
Thank you. Requests for proposals were requested May of 2019 of this year. A part of that process, we had walkthroughs with several different groups of individuals. The recurring question that continued to come up throughout those walkthroughs was about the asbestos, what it looked like, what the remediation costs were, and that is unknown at this point. We did receive one proposal. The proposal was for $100. It had 5 different phases as part of that project, with an unspecified number of years to complete that project. City staff is requesting or looking to reject the proposal, have the asbestos testing completed, and then look to request new proposals after that process. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Ms. Basom? Councilmember Berge.
Thank you. Do you know what they wanted to use the building for the $100?
They want to continue to use it there because the proposal was submitted from Valley Media Works, so they want to continue to use it for that purpose.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? I don't see any. Thank you. So on a motion by Councilmember Gregor and seconded by Councilmember Beaton, this item is moved. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Emanuel.
Thank you, Council President. I do have an amendment I would like to offer. However, I don't want to squelch early discussions, so if folks would like to discuss, I'd encourage that. Otherwise, I will be making a motion to postpone, and I can share more about that if I'm able to introduce it.
Any discussion? Go ahead. Councilmember Worthman.
Thank you, Council President. You know, I think there's a lot of opportunity in this building. I think that with more time, there is the potential that we're going to see other partners in our community come forward with different ideas. And, you know, to me, that's one of the things that I'm a little concerned about is, you know, I would absolutely like to see some more opportunities come forward. So I think that's sort of what I'm looking for in this whole thing is how do we make sure that we're working with all the different community partners who have an interest in this, and maybe even a co-location is something that we look at. So thank you, Council President.
Any other discussion? Councilmember Emanuel.
Thank you, Council President. I'd like to move to postpone the sale of city-owned property located at the address, former Station 10, until such time as staff has had the opportunity to evaluate and assess any environmental issues with the building and remarket the property for sale. If I'm able to have a seconder, then I can share the copies of this.
Is there a second? Councilmember Christopherson. Councilmember Emanuel.
Thank you so much. I'm going to approach the podium just to give this to the overhead.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Council President. The reason why I'm introducing a postponement of this is because it seems that the city definitely has a responsibility to look at a very serious environmental issue. And I think that we're still early enough in kind of trying to understand a bit more to keep our options open. Essentially, I think the city has 2 options. One, to donate the building and accept that this is a sunk cost, to use a econ term from my days at UW-Eau Claire, or to look at this as an opportunity to perhaps recoup some money and put that back into our funds. And right now, I just don't think we know enough. And I'm concerned that if we, as an organization, give a hard no, that we're signaling maybe a premature answer that we're not interested in a potential donation. So I'm not here advocating for or against either. What I would like to see is a bit more time. And so what this does is it allows us to just postpone the RFP process. Then staff will have an opportunity to evaluate and assess the environmental issues. This does not mean that the building will be raised. It means that once that information is known, then staff will remarket or put the RFP back up on online for folks to bid on. And then the current applicant who has already submitted something can then update their application or keep it as is, and then the city staff can evaluate perhaps a broader applicant pool for who would like to take this piece of this parcel on.
Thank you, Councilmember Emanuel. Councilmember Christopherson, did you have anything?
I have no comment.
No. Is there any other? Councilmember Klinkhammer.
Thank you, Mr. President. It would seem to me that by turning down the offer on the conditions that are stated in the issue, anybody, once we know what the impact of the remediation is going to be, anybody that's interested can resubmit another offer. And at that point, we know what the value is if we choose to make a donation or to give it. I mean, at least we know what we're giving up. There's no reason why we have to postpone it.
Any other discussion? Councilmember Christopherson.
Thank you, President Weld. I would benefit from more information. The resolution in front of us says to reject, and the amendment is to postpone. Is there some legislative or policy issue that happens with rejecting versus postponing?
City Attorney Nick.
I'll try. I think the two are really trying to get to fairly similar points. I'll try. Not a concern. I'll just state what the postponement does. So you have a resolution in front of you that tries to bring to a conclusion an RFP process that resulted in one proposal of, in essence, asking for the land to be donated to them. And what we're letting you know, what Ms. Bassam shared, is that there was broader interest in the property, but there was some concern about the environmental. So the staff recommendation is that unless you want to go ahead with the $100 sale, you really should bring that RFP to a close and start a new one. So with the postponement, what it does legislatively is it postpones this resolution until such time as we do the same thing. So that's where the commonality is both would then say, well, you move forward then to the environmental. The difference just being that then we're sort of in the midst of the same RFP. So what do we do staff-wise there? Is that impossible to get over? No. I mean, in essence, we'll just interpret that to mean we're going to put out a new RFP, really, to remarket it with new conditions. And then the only other little trick we'll have to get over is if the postponement passes, it postpones a resolution to reject kind of this RFP. And so we probably just legislatively will have to bring that back to you to deal with the resolution in this form, and we'll just follow it right up with another action of here's the responses we got and what do you want to do with it. And that, that we can work through that. Again, I've always advised you don't get tripped up with, the parliamentary stuff. We'll figure that out. But practically, I think largely they do the same thing. I mean, if it postpones, we have an understanding, unless you're telling us something different, but at least as I gather it, to go do environmental work and bring back a new RFP in essence. And that's what the resolution says as well, with the nuance of not saying no to Valley Media Works in the interim.
Councilmember Klinkhammer.
Mr. President, again, if we want to accept or consider accepting a $1 offer on a piece of property as a gift to an organization or any other entity, I think it's in our best interest and a responsible thing that we know what value we are donating. And if we take action on this RFP, we do the remediation, or we understand what the remediation is going to cost, and then open up the RFP to another offer. It doesn't prevent them from making the same offer, but we have a better idea of what it is that we're donating, the value of what we're donating, if we're going to do that.
Any other discussion? Councilmember Worthman.
Thank you, Council President. I think I understand Councilmember Klinkhammer's standpoint. I think that the issue is in some ways I feel like with the environmental assessment, we're able to make a choice and make a decision with that much more knowledge. And so I'd rather have that than go ahead right now and say yes or no. I'd rather know fully what's at stake in this building. So if it's essentially the same thing, I'll be supporting the amendment.
Thank you, Councilmember Worthman. Councilmember Gregert.
Thank you, President Weld. Yeah, I feel I'll be supporting this amendment because it just kind of leaves open, I think, the conversation in the community a bit more about the possibilities for this property, and I think by saying no, we kind of shut that down to an extent. So, you know, it's possible that we would be open to, basically this allows us to be open to more possibilities as we explore the environmental issues, and then allows the community to dream a little bit more while that is being done, because I think we could see a lot more proposals depending on what kind of message we send today. So,
thank you. Any other discussion? Councilmember Klinkhammer.
I must be missing something. It would seem to me, if I understand our city attorney correctly, if we postpone this, then the only offer we're going to be considering once we know more about what the remediation issue is this one. We're not going to have an opportunity. I mean, we'll know more about what the impacts are financially if we accept or reject this offer, but we're not going to have other offers to look at because we won't have the opportunity to have issued another RFP for any other offers. Am I correct at that?
City Attorney Nick.
Yeah, I don't think that you are entirely, because the direction of the motion would be to remarket. Again, I think the narrow distinction, that's what I was trying to get at, is, you know, either one pretty much gets you to the same spot. For us, our recommendation is frankly not to postpone and to conclude one RFP, because we think it's a better idea that the RFP was put out under one set of circumstances, which was basically take the property as is, you do your site investigation, and make us your best offer. That netted us this one offer of a nominal value, $100, so largely a donation. But we saw that there are other interested parties. So our recommendation really just on purchasing policy is we think it's better to just close that RFP. We had one offer based on that set of facts, and instead do the environmental and then go out and market it again under a new set of facts. Councilmember Emanuel is saying really do the same thing, but keep this one proposal still out there. it largely does the same thing, but as Councilmember Klinkhammer said, if we finished that and restarted, that same party could resubmit, and they can either way. I mean, the functional thing is we're going to put out a new set of RFPs, and Valley Media Works is going to have to make a decision of whether they're sticking with their offer or changing it based on the new circumstances after an environmental.
Councilmember Klinkhammer.
So I didn't think that we had that option. I mean, if the RFP was put out, there was a finite date that that was an offer had to be made. This doesn't extend that date, and it doesn't give anybody else an opportunity to submit an offer, does it?
City Attorney Nick.
Right. It indicates a direction to evaluate and assess any environmental issues with the building and remarket the property for sale. So again, we think the right way to do that is how we've brought it forward for the very reasons you state, frankly. An RFP was out there with a definitive end date. We got one proposal. That process should be done. We should just start a new one. This one is very similar to the point that it's similar without really any distinction, other than when it comes back, we'll probably have to put 2 items on your agenda instead of 1.
Councilmember Christopherson.
Thank you, President Weld. May I pose a question for Councilmember Emanuel?
Certainly.
I'm wondering in this amendment if it's the retention of the relationship with the bidder, or if there's if she could be clear as to what she hopes to gain through the amendment.
Councilmember Emanuel.
Thank you so much. In my correspondence with the city attorney over the weekend, there was a sentence in email, if I may read it. It says, the recommendation is to take further steps to obtain a best price offer and seek substantial reuse of the land. And that's what would be occurring if we just rejected it today. And to me, I don't know that we have enough information to say for sure we want to, seek substantial reuse of the land. What we're talking about is likely raising the building, eliminating it, and somebody can start from scratch. So maybe that's what the city will do. Maybe that's what a final decision will be. Also, maybe after an environmental assessment comes online, we say, well, you can't use it for this, but if you don't touch the asbestos, perhaps you can use it for XYZ. So, I mean, there's, I think, 2 distinct ways that this could go, and I just feel like we don't know yet. And I really do get concerned about, at times, building I think it is appropriate to say yes and no. We do that all the time. Every time we vote, we say yes and no. And I think there's also a way that we can hold space for new possibilities by saying, you know what, let's just pause, hit the pause button, gather some more information, and come back. I fully expect that other people will make a pitch, hopefully based upon the information that we'll know, whether that's for $365,000, for $1, $500,000. I have no idea. But I just think that we have an opportunity to help perhaps reshape our culture a little bit of let's hold some space for some possibilities.
Any other discussion? If I could just clarify on the statement, and maybe it's for the city manager, is the resolution state that the city, without any further council action, would that give them authorization to tear down the building? City Attorney Nick or City Manager Peters?
Sure. It doesn't have that authorization. It doesn't prohibit it either. So I think if that's part of the concern, really the direction I would suggest is an amendment to have that as a direction, to not raise the building until another RFP was completed and a set of proposals. Really, my only concern with the distinction of these two approaches is that, sort of best contract, best purchasing approaches is you have a set of standards out there. You had a start date for that, you had facts based on it, you had an end date for it, and you say yes or no to it at that point, as opposed to saying maybe at that point and then directing another process to go sort of run parallel to it. So that's really the only issue we're dealing with here, not whether the structure would be raised or not.
Thank you. Councilmember Emanuel.
Thank you, Council President. I guess I'd like to just clarify that I've heard some language tonight of like, there's the right way to do it and there's the best way to do it. And in my conversation over the weekend, I heard that what I'm proposing is possible. And that is certainly an option, would be an exact quote. And I just want to be real clear in the public that this is not a bad way to do it. It's another way to do it. And I just get a little concerned about sometimes some language that would suggest there's a bad way to do it. I think this is a very legitimate and thoughtful way to do it. It doesn't have to pass. But if it does, it's okay. And if it doesn't, it's also okay. So I just don't want to have like us going into that dichotomy of a right way and a wrong way. I think we work this stuff out together.
Any other discussion? I guess I would like to weigh in. I like the idea of an amendment, I think, versus the postponement, adding some language that again, doesn't authorize the tearing down of the building or any other concerns that may be coming from the resolution that's being proposed. I guess I feel like now that this RFP has expired and we've exhausted all of our resources to gather an offer or an interested party, and it really hasn't come together yet, that I think, to me, it makes sense to nullify, the existing offer, only with the idea that we answer the questions that we need to get answered, and then we get the information that we need to make a smart decision and put the right price on this property. And if in the end it is Valley Media that comes back to us with an offer that makes sense both to our community and to them and to everyone else, then that opportunity is still there. And certainly anyone else that comes along after that RFP is reissued also will have that same opportunity. But I understand the spirit of the postponement, but I think to me it makes sense to finish one, get the information and the questions answered, and then issue a new RFP, and still inviting Valley Media and everyone else to participate with that. And then in the meantime, have an amendment that states that we will not tear down the building. We will not take any action other than what's been authorized, and that's just a fact-finding more than anything. So if there's any interest in an amendment, I would make an amendment, but otherwise, any other discussion? I don't see any. All right, so back to the postponement. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Berge. Aye. Christopherson. Aye. Emanuel.
Aye.
Gregert.
Aye.
Klinkhammer.
No.
Lohr.
Aye.
Well.
Aye.
Worthman.
Aye.
Anderson. Aye. Beaton. Aye. Benjamin.
And that item passes. Moving on to agenda item number 26. Issuance of bonds, resolution authorizing the issuance of $10,375,000 aggregate principal amount of the general obligation corporate purpose bonds Series 2019A of the City of Eau Claire, and Chippewa Counties, Wisconsin, in such amount, providing details, prescribing the form of bond, awarding the bonds to the best bidder, levying taxes and related matters. It's Mr. Winzans.
Thank you, Council President. Well, if it's okay with you, I'd like to handle this agenda item as well as the next two with a single presentation. Before the City Council this afternoon are three resolutions that authorize the sale of various tax-exempt bonds, taxable bonds, and promissory notes. Today at 10 o'clock this morning, we took bids on these bonds and would like to have the City Council this evening award the sale of those. Tax-exempt issue 2009A are 20-year tax-exempt general obligation bonds that are funding street improvements, public library improvements, stormwater improvements, parks and public grounds, specifically citywide trails, and improvements to the water system. At the time that the preliminary resolutions were approved by the City Council, interest rates were estimated to be 3.19%, and the total interest cost on this debt issue was estimated to be about $3.55 million. So as I indicated, bids were received at 10 o'clock this morning, and we had 5 bidders, which is very, very good, and we received excellent bids. The low bid was submitted by Piper Jaffray in an amount of 2.197097%, so almost a full percentage point below what the estimates were a month or so ago. Staff is recommending that we award the sale to Piper Jaffray and Company. The total interest cost is estimated to be $2.566 million, which is about $1 million less in interest costs than, again, was estimated just about a month ago. The 2019B issue is for tax-exempt promissory notes. Again, the difference between bonds and promissory notes is the promissory notes carry a maturity of 10 years. These promissory notes are being used to finance street improvements, specifically those improvements that are being special assessed, land building and equipment, the replacement of transit buses, and also refunding of 2009A debt. So refunding is just a different word for refinancing, basically the same thing as many of us have done when we refinance our homes to generate some interest savings. So at the time that this was initially brought forward, we were estimating interest savings at about $375,000. Interest rates on the 2019B notes were estimated to be 2.61%, and the total interest cost was estimated to be a little bit less than $2 million. And the interest savings due to the refunding at $662,000. So we received 5 bids also on the notes, with JP Morgan Securities being the low bidder at 1.719349%. And staff is recommending the award to JP Morgan Securities. The total interest cost on this is estimated to be $1,447,000, $47,999. And lastly, the 2019C taxable bonds. This is a taxable note issue or bond issue being used to finance parking improvements, park improvements, specifically renovations at Hobbs Ice Center, and funding for the redevelopment authority to acquire land within the cannery redevelopment area. Interest rates were estimated to be 4.13%, and the total interest cost was estimated to be about $1.85 million. We received 4 bids on the 2019 C taxable issue, with Robert W. Baird and Company being the low bidder at 2.584712%. So this is nearly about 1.5% lower than what the initial projections were. The total interest cost in this particular on this particular issue is estimated to be $1,185,000, so about $700,000 lower than when we brought this before the City Council initially. So once again, great bid results, very low interest rates on our issues, and staff is recommending awards to the low bidders. Be happy to answer questions.
Any questions for Mr. Wynsands? Councilmember Berge.
Council President, I was just wondering, is the only criteria to choose just the cheapest or the lowest interest rate to pick the best one?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're recommending. I mean, if there were some issue with one of the, or some concern with one of the bidders, you know, it's possible we would recommend something other than the lowest bid. In this particular case, they're all qualified bidders and all bidders that we've done business with before.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Wynsands. Thanks for the great news. So on a motion by Councilmember Benjamin and seconded by Councilmember Anderson, agenda item number 26 for the Series 2019A is moved. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Christopherson. Aye. Emmanuel. Aye. Gregert.
Aye.
Klinkhammer.
Aye.
Lohr.
Aye.
Weld.
Aye.
Worthman.
Aye.
Anderson. Aye. Beaton. Aye. Benjamin. Berge. Aye.
And that item passes. Agenda item number 27, a resolution authorizing the issuance of $13,888,000 aggregate principal amount of general obligation refunding promissory notes, Series 2019B of the City of Eau Claire, and Chippewa Counties. In such amount, providing details, prescribing the form of note, awarding the notes to the best bidder, levying taxes, and related matters. Are there any questions in regards to agenda item number 27? Seeing none, on a motion by Councilmember Manuel and seconded by Councilmember Beaton, this item is moved. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Emmanuel. Aye. Gregert.
Aye.
Klinkhammer.
Aye.
Lohr.
Aye.
Weld.
Aye.
Worthman.
Aye.
Anderson. Aye. Beaton. Aye. Benjamin. Berge. Aye. Christopherson. Aye.
And that item has passed. Agenda item number 28, a resolution authorizing the issuance of $4,065,000 aggregate principal amount of taxable general obligation bonds, Series 2019C of the City of Eau Claire, and Chippewa Counties, Wisconsin, in such amount providing details, prescribing the form of the bond, awarding the bonds to the best bidder, levying taxes and related matters. Is there any questions in regards to this agenda item? Seeing none, and on a motion by Councilmember Lohr and seconded by Councilmember Christopherson, this item is moved. Any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Gregert.
Aye.
Klinkhammer.
Aye.
Lohr.
Aye.
Weld.
Aye.
Worthman.
Aye.
Anderson. Aye. Beaton. Aye. Benjamin. Berge. Aye. Christopherson. Aye. Emmanuel. Aye.
And that item passes. Agenda item number 29, an ordinance for action. an ordinance in accordance with the section 66.0217 Wisconsin statutes annexing to the city of Eau Claire, and particularly to the 15th Assessment Ward, 2nd Aldermanic District, being a part of the northeast quarter of the southeast quarter of section 126.9 West, Town of Washington, Eau Claire County, as shown on the planning drawing number 19-3A. Per Wisconsin statutes, an annexation ordinance requires 2/3 vote of the elected members of the governing body. Therefore, 8 affirmative votes of the 11 elected council members are required for adoption. Mr. Allen, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Council President Weld and members of the council. Before you this afternoon is this request to annex 3 separate lots at the southwest corner of Old Town Hall Road and Graff Road, as shown number 1 here on the overview map. Southern part of the area adjacent to City of Eau Claire city limits. The map in question, as Council President Weld identified, shows a little bit more specifically how the property lies in the area and is adjacent to corporate limits of the City of Eau Claire. Further zoom in is an aerial photo of the property. It's a little bit hard to see some of the outlines here, but it's these 3 properties in this area, equaling just over 40 acres, more or less, and inclusive of right-of-way, including right-of-way along Graff Road. So the map was showed to the Planning Commission last week. This shows the county zoning, so just shows how the zoning is consistent in the county area and how it connects again to the city, which is not shown in any kind of zoning coloration here. And then finally, reference to utilities. Blue is water, red is sanitary sewer. Again, there are utilities currently existing that are accessible to the property in question. Again, the property owner has submitted a petition to annex about 40.83 acres of land. Again, as noted, it is 3 different lots at the southwest corner here, Old Town Hall Road and Graff Road. Again, it is located within the sewer service area of the City of Eau Claire, and again has those connections available on the north side of Old Town Hall Road. No land use changes are proposed at this time as a result of the requested annexation. The request is consistent with the comprehensive plan. It was presented to the Planning Commission last week. They have recommended approval here for your consideration this afternoon. And I know the applicant's representative here is here as well, if there are any questions of him.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Any questions? Councilmember Worthman.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Mr. Allen, for the presentation and work on this. When the City Council approved the development that's just south and east of here, the last decade, I think it was probably 6 or 7 years ago, that was a fairly controversial, that area, fairly controversial project. And I remember at the time neighbors from the surrounding community were concerned about the impact on the area. And so that kind of raises my question is, have we had much of what has been the feedback from the town of Washington or neighbors in that area so far about this proposal?
Very good question. Have not heard anything directly from any of the adjacent neighbors at this point. Perhaps the applicant's representative might have heard something more directly. I did speak with the town administrator for the town of Washington and just had a conversation in terms of incorporating that Graff Road right-of-way. So just comments related to access were really all I had heard from the town of Washington itself.
Thank you. Could I have a follow-up?
Certainly.
And I think this might be, maybe you can answer this, but do we normally hold public discussions on these annexations? I know we didn't have a meeting last night, but not required. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Allen? Councilmember Gregor.
Thank you, President Weld. Thank you, Mr. Allen. I know that there's, some other transportation planning that would have to go along with developing this area further, but could you maybe tell me where we're at in terms of, and maybe Mr. Solberg would know more, but there's not really a very easy way for people who are walking and biking to reach this area from the larger part of the city, and because there's no way for someone to walk or bike through a Cloverleaf freeway intersection essentially that exists at 53 and 94. So there's I guess my question is what is the timeline for a road bridge or a bike or pedestrian bridge that is accommodating to bicyclists and pedestrians to reach this area from the area to the north?
That is a question I might defer to Mr. Solberg on. I know, yes, most certainly a rural cross-section of road, both Old Town Hall Road and currently Graff Road, since it is wholly within the town, Washington.
Mr. Solberg.
Thank you. In the past, there had been a interest in at least exploring a bridge that would connect development north of the interstate with development south of the interstate. The city doesn't have a bridge in our comprehensive plan for a brand new bridge. There isn't funding like we have for replacement bridges in this location. I think if a bridge were to go in, it would be largely in conjunction with a development that would require, at the time, alternate access to this area that would come off of here. How we're getting over to this area with bicycle and pedestrian accommodations, as we have developed on the west side of Old Town Hall Road, when we do those streets over there, we have on-street bike lanes and we have curb and gutter and sidewalk and so forth to start coming in from the west. And there also is talk in this park that will be in the future along Otter Creek, trying to connect a trail underneath the interstate to come out with property to the intersection of this county road, so you would be able to go on a trail that would parallel the creek. And I've talked with my counterpart at Eau Claire County with land that they have recently purchased in this area, so we would have a connection that would go through here. But you're right, where you have an interchange with two freeway cross sections, it's not even permitted to have a bicycle in that location statutorily. So anything in this block here is not for non-motorized vehicles for that.
Follow-up?
Yeah, Mr. Solberg, thank you for that. I guess so you're saying that we probably wouldn't build a bridge across I-94 unless there was a development. What sort of development would necessitate or prompt such a?
Well, at one point back in the late 90s, I think Strong Funds was looking at building a second headquarters in this location here that would overload the Gulf Road interchange, and they were looking at alternate access to the site, and they were looking at the 53 interchange and the 93 and using Old Town Hall Road to come into that development. I'm not sure what there would be in this location. If you're looking at a bridge, you would certainly want it wide enough for vehiculars and pedestrians. A pedestrian bridge alone, there would be $2 to $3 million at a minimum to go over the interstate because it's so long and wide. For comparison with vehicular bridge, the Water Street Bridge was approaching $10 million, and this is considerably in that same ballpark for that. So it's a very, very, very expensive bridge to go over the interstate. So I think there would have to be, there would have to be considerable need in this area to justify an expense like that when we have other, like Highway T, that goes to the northwest side. There's a gateway extension that's talked about going up to Altoona, Cameron Street interchange out to the interstate. There's a lot of other needs that would have to be balanced when you're talking about 8 figures worth of cost for a bridge. I don't know what there would be for, if headquarters HQ2 went in here, I think that would probably justify it, but I don't know what development would be out there. Residential development, I don't know if it would generate enough traffic to justify going beyond the 2 interchanges.
City Attorney Nick.
Before Mr. Stolberg gets too far away, and he can certainly correct me. I think you made a general reference to the west, but maybe you comment on, or I can certainly, not trying to be an engineer, but remind council that there is a trail crossing straight to the west of here and 93. So there's a bike corridor that crosses 94 at Highway 93. And while this property is not immediately adjacent to it, all the property to the west is in the sewer service area. All is anticipated for annexation, and the city is well south of the I-94 corridor and expected to go further south by all our planning documents. So that would be the existing bike pedestrian crossing over the 94 interstate.
Correct. We're to this location right here with an existing trail, and then the Old Town Hall Road cross-section was reconstructed up to this point, and as we continue going down Old Town Hall Road, we fully expect to continue making that same pedestrian and bicycle-friendly cross-section that we have in this location as we proceed to the east if there are further annexations on Old Town Hall Road. So it's not as direct as right here, but cost-wise at this point, this facility is in, and you have good connections through the Oakwood Hills and Oak Knoll Drive and Commerce Valley Road to get over to the commercial center. But there are other alternate plans in the future that we're at least exploring that would be considerably less costly for a trail connection than going over the interstate there. So.
Any other questions for either Mr. Solberg or Mr. Allen? I don't see any. Thank you. On a motion by Councilmember Klinkhammer and seconded by Councilmember Worthman, this item is moved. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Christopherson.
I was the one dissenting vote on the Plan Commission, and I will support this, I believe, in council, but I do want to say that I am voting in favor of the planning that has gone into the comprehensive plan and the vision of people that will come after me, because all I see here is urban sprawl, and I personally, that would not align with my values. But if there were some idea of what this property is being annexed for, but at this point there's no development plan. So I will support this, but personally I would like to see us focusing on the infill and our retail areas on the South Rim. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Christopherson. Any other discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Klinkhammer.
Aye.
Lohr.
Aye.
Weld.
Aye.
Worthman.
Aye.
Anderson. Aye. Beaton. Aye. Benjamin. Aye. Berge. Aye. Christopherson.
Aye.
Emmanuel. Aye. Gragert.
Aye. And that item passes. We have two ordinances for introduction. Ordinance amending the zoning code of the City of Eau Claire by amending the general development plan regarding restrictive covenants for the Sky Park Industrial Center, and then also an ordinance in accordance with Section 66.0217 Wisconsin statutes annexing to the City of Eau Claire, particularly to the 15th Assessment Ward, 2nd Aldermanic District, being of the part of the northeast quarter of the southwest quarter and in the northwest quarter of the southwest quarter of Section 26.27.9 West, Town of Washington, Eau Claire County, as shown on the planning drawing. Does council wish to suspend the rules and take up either of these two items? I don't see any. That brings us to announcements and directives.
Council President Weld. Two announcements this evening. One, following this meeting, we will go into our start of our budget process. We're going to be in a different room than you're used to. Rather than across the hall, we'll be down in the conference room that is near the Health Department in G302. So if you can, following this meeting, work your way downstairs to G302, we'll start talking about the 2020 budget process. And then on Friday morning is the Eggs and Issues. with our very own Mr. Allen and Council President Weld talking about local housing issues. So if you have not had an opportunity to sign up for Eggs and Issues on Friday, I would encourage you to do so and look forward to seeing you there. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Does council have any announcements? Seeing none, and without any further objection, we are adjourned.
This program was brought to you by a cooperation between Newsworks and the City of Eau Claire. A transcript of this meeting is available for the hearing impaired. It will be available within 7 days of this telecast. Call 715-839-4912 or TDD 715-839-1689. Or write Eau Claire City Clerk, P.O. Box 5148, Eau Claire, Wisconsin 54702-5148. Newsworks is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, please contact us via phone at 715-839-5067 or online at valleymediaworks.org.